This is not how the Philadelphia Phillies were supposed to start their 2026 season. Somewhere along the way, something went terribly wrong, and now we're sitting here in late April watching one of the most confusing, frustrating, and downright perplexing performances we've seen from a team that was supposed to be a legitimate World Series contender. The vibes are weird in Philly right now, and honestly, I can't remember a time where the frustration levels have been this elevated this early in the season. So let's talk about what is happening, because there's a lot to unpack here, and frankly, there are some legitimate concerns that are beginning to seep into my mind about whether this organization has the answers it needs to turn things around. Let's start with the most pressing issue, the one that's been absolutely front and center, and that's Jesús Luzardo. When Dave Dombrowski opened the checkbook and handed this guy a contract extension, I genuinely thought it was premature. Here's a guy who had the best season of his career in 2025, pitched more innings than he ever had at the major league level, had strikeout stuff that was absolutely unbelievable, and suddenly, the front office decides now is the time to lock him in long term. I thought this was going to be a contract year for Luzardo where he set his market. I thought he was going to prove it on the open market. But Dombrowski had other ideas, and now we're sitting here watching what might be one of the worst starts to a season for a newly extended pitcher in recent memory. The numbers are absolutely brutal. Jesús Luzardo has given up 5 or more earned runs in 3 of his first 4 starts in 2026. Let me repeat that because it's important. 3 out of 4 starts. You want to know how many times he did that in the entire 2025 season? 4 times in 32 starts. So in 1 month, he's matched half of his worst performance frequency from an entire 162-game season. His ERA is sitting at 7.94 through 4 starts. He's allowed 28 runs in 22 2/3 innings of work. Opposing hitters are batting over 300 on his fastball, with the official number hovering around 384. That's not a mistake. That's not a small sample size issue. That's hitters absolutely teeing off on the one pitch he's supposed to be dominant with. To Luzardo's credit, he's taking it on the chin publicly. He's wearing the responsibility, and he's acknowledged that giving up 5 runs in 1 inning is unacceptable. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where I want to dig a little deeper into what's actually happening. There's been conversation all season long about Luzardo potentially tipping his pitches. It's something that was discussed quite a bit during his cold spell last year, and for whatever reason, it seems to be an issue more with the Phillies than with any other organization in baseball. When asked directly about it, Luzardo's been pretty defiant. He says he's not tipping. He says he works on this all the time. He says they make sure there's nothing that could be an advantage to the other team. But here's my issue with that answer. I don't love it. I would feel a whole lot better if we actually knew what the problem was instead of being told it's not the problem. When the Phillies played the Cubs and Luzardo got absolutely shelled, it felt to me like the Cubs were sitting on pitches. They weren't chasing. They were letting the fastball blow by for stretches and waiting on the hanging curve, whatever pitch they were looking for. It had the vibe of a team that knew what was coming. Now, I'm sure Luzardo isn't doing this intentionally, and maybe he's correct that there's nothing to it. But you've got to get in the lab. You've got to watch the film. You've got to figure out what's going wrong, because this cannot continue for the length of the season. This is not sustainable, and frankly, this is not what the Phillies signed up for when they handed him that extension. But here's where it gets really weird, and this is where the real story lies. The Phillies pitching staff as a whole is making absolutely no sense. I'm talking about a statistical paradox that is almost impossible to explain. Let me break this down for you, because this is genuinely fascinating and deeply concerning at the same time. The Phillies pitching staff ranks second in the entire MLB in strikeouts per 9 innings. They rank second in walks per 9 innings. They rank second in strikeout-to-walk ratio. They rank 7th in home runs allowed per 9 innings. They have the best ground ball percentage in the entire league. But their ERA? Their ERA ranks 25th. That's not a coincidence. That's not a fluke. That's a systemic problem that doesn't make sense. According to Fangraph's wins above replacement metrics, the Phillies have generated 3.5 fWAR, which is the second best in baseball behind only the Seattle Mariners at 3.7. Fangraphs, the most advanced statistical tool available to baseball analysts, believes the Phillies have the second best pitching staff in baseball, but they have the 5th worst ERA. How is that possible? Well, here's the thing. Their fielding independent pitching, which is FIP, comes in at 3.06, which is the second best in baseball. Christopher Sanchez has a 2.01 ERA with a 1.90 FIP. Aaron Nola has a 3.56 ERA with a 4.03 FIP. Taijuan Walker has a 7.36 ERA with a 6.50 FIP. Andrew Painter has a 3.77 ERA with a 1.55 FIP. And Jesús Luzardo has a 7.94 ERA with a 2.49 FIP. Not a single pitcher on this staff is outpitching his underlying metrics. So what does this tell us? It tells us that the pitchers themselves are actually performing at a high level according to the metrics that measure things outside of a pitcher's control. But the results on the field don't match the underlying data. The Phillies have a bigger gap between their ERA and their FIP than any team in baseball. Their difference is 1.86, which is a full run more than the next closest team, the Astros, at 0.85. The difference is literally double. So either the Phillies' defense is an absolute catastrophe, or there's something else happening that we're not seeing. Now, there have been some ugly defensive moments. The whole Trey Turner and Alec Bohm situation on what should have been a straightforward double play turned into free runs for the other team. There's been some genuinely awful moments out there in the field. But is the defense really that bad? Look at the personnel. Adolis Garcia is a massive upgrade from a fielding perspective in right field. Bryson Stott is Gold Glove caliber at second base. JT Realmuto has been awesome behind the plate. Justin Crawford has been largely successful in center field. These are good defenders. So either something is genuinely broken with how the defense is executing, or the underlying metrics are telling us something that the surface-level results aren't capturing. Here's my honest take. I've become more of an eye test guy the more I've dove into advanced metrics. The eye test tells me that yes, the pitchers are missing locations. Yes, the defense has had some rough moments. Yes, the results are what they are, and results matter in baseball. You can't just take it out of the equation when hitters are putting the ball in play and lining doubles into the gaps. You can't just pretend that doesn't count. So while the underlying metrics are encouraging, the bottom line is that this team is not getting the results they need to get, and they're running out of time to turn things around. Now let's shift gears because there's another issue that's beginning to concern me deeply, and that's the Aiden Miller situation. This is a guy that the organization has drafted, has invested a ton of money in, speaks really highly of, and there's a clear long-term plan for him to be a key part of this franchise's future. But injuries seem to be threatening that entire vision right now. Aiden Miller is dealing with lower back soreness, and he's been placed on the minor league injured list. He's progressed to rotational exercises, but here's the thing that bothers me. He hasn't even started swinging a bat yet. Dave Dombrowski has been vague about the entire situation, which is never a good sign. When a front office gets cagey about an injury, it usually means something more serious is going on than they're letting on. Dombrowski's recent comments have been frustratingly non-committal. He said Miller's been making progress, but they're guiding him through it slowly. Really slowly. That's not the language you want to hear about a guy who's supposed to be part of your future. And then we got this report from Tom Verducci of Sports Illustrated, who reiterated on a podcast that it could be months for Miller, not weeks, months. We're talking potentially the entire season being impacted by this injury. Here's what really bothers me about this situation. Dombrowski refused to provide any additional information regarding the treatment Miller has received, citing HIPAA regulations. I understand HIPAA exists for a reason, but other organizations have traditionally been more transparent about these kinds of things. I've said this before about Joel Embiid, and I'm saying it again here. The more you're guarded with information like this, the more people assume the worst. If you just threw out what the deal was, if you just said, here's what's happening, here's the timeline, here's what we're doing to fix it, everyone feels better. Everyone's on the same page. But when you clam up and use HIPAA as a shield, it creates this mystery that starts to eat at people. So why does this matter right now? It matters because Alec Bohm is currently a disaster. The guy who was supposed to be the cornerstone of the infield, the guy who had a strong finish to last season, is absolutely struggling out of the gates in 2026. He's batting .153 through 16 games. He's got a .448 OPS. He's got 1 double and 1 home run. He was moved from the cleanup spot to the bottom of the order, and get this, in a crucial moment against the Cubs with the bases loaded and 2 outs, down by 3 runs, Rob Thompson pinch hit Alec Bohm for Brandon Marsh, who has been arguably the best hitter on this team so far this season. Bohm struck out on 4 pitches. Let me be clear about something. I think that was a terrible managerial decision. I understand the right-handed batter versus left-handed pitcher principle. It's baseball 101. But Bohm hasn't been able to hit the broadside of a barn this season. He's 1 for his last 20. He's been consistently bad. Meanwhile, Brandon Marsh has been great for this team so far. Taking out your best hitter to put in a guy who's ice cold in a high-leverage situation doesn't make sense to me, no matter what the matchup says. So here's the big picture concern. If Aiden Miller doesn't get healthy, and if the timeline is actually months like some reports suggest, what's the plan? Do you keep Alec Bohm and hope he turns it around? Do you trade him? Do you try to move him and bring Miller up whenever he's ready? These are the kinds of long-term strategic questions that organizations need to have answered, and right now it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty in that department. Miller, to his credit, has been clear about his intentions. He said he doesn't really care about getting settled at a certain position. He feels comfortable everywhere. He just wants to get to the big leagues. The Phillies' approach has been that they won't bring anyone up until they have a clear role for them. Look at what they did with Andrew Painter and Justin Crawford. There was all this talk about whether Crawford was ready last season, and the organization took their time. But for Miller, this back injury has derailed everything. And for a player who's supposed to be part of your franchise's future, that's a concerning development. The frustration is real in Philadelphia right now. The vibes are weird. Winning is the best deodorant, and this team isn't winning the way they're supposed to be. The bats aren't waking up, the pitching staff has all these encouraging underlying metrics, but the results don't match. Jesús Luzardo looks lost at times. Alec Boehm can't hit. Aiden Miller is dealing with a mysterious back injury. And Rob Thompson is making questionable in-game decisions that are adding to the frustration. But here's what I want to say. It's still early. It's still April. There's so much season left to play. The Phillies have the talent to turn this around. They've done it before. Zack Wheeler hasn't even pitched yet, and when he comes back, it's going to change things. The bats are going to wake up eventually. The pitchers are going to figure out what's going wrong. And maybe, just maybe, some clarity is going to come from the front office about Aiden Miller's situation and what that means for the future. But right now, today, in this moment, things need to change. The pitching staff needs to start matching their results to their underlying metrics. The offense needs to produce runs because you can't win games if you're only scoring 3 or 4 runs a night. Jesús Luzardo needs to figure out what's going wrong and fix it fast because the organization invested in him and he needs to show that investment was worth it. Rob Thompson needs to trust his best hitters, not play matchup roulette in crucial situations. And the front office needs to be transparent about what's going on with Aiden Miller so we can all understand the long-term plan. This Phillies team has championship aspirations. They brought in talent. They've got pieces in place. But championships aren't won by struggling this early in the season and letting things fester. Championships are won by teams that identify problems quickly, fix them, and move forward. Right now, the Phillies have multiple problems, and they're all interconnected. Fix the pitching, and suddenly you're not losing games 7-4 at home to the Cubs. Get clarity on Aiden Miller, and suddenly you're not having these existential questions about Alec Boehm's future. Let Brandon Marsh hit in crucial moments, and maybe you're putting up runs when it matters. The season is young, hope is not lost, but the time to get things right is now. The time to start winning is now. Because if this team keeps playing like this, if this team keeps making these kinds of decisions, if this team keeps getting vague answers about its future, then yeah, maybe the conversations about their best opportunity being in the rearview mirror become a little bit more real. And nobody in Philadelphia wants that. So Philly Nation, that's where we stand. We've got a pitching staff that makes no sense statistically. We've got a newly extended pitcher who looks completely lost. We've got an infield situation that's clouded by injury and poor performance. We've got a manager making questionable decisions. And we've got a front office that's not being transparent about its long-term plans. It's a lot to process and it's a lot to worry about. But there's still time. There's still hope. And hopefully this team figures it out sooner rather than later. Let me know in the comments below what you think about all of this. Are you concerned about Jesús Luzardo? Do you think the pitching staff's underlying metrics matter, or are results what count? What's your take on the Aiden Miller situation? And should Rob Thompson have made that pinch hit decision with Alec Boehm? Drop all those thoughts down below. I want to hear what you're thinking because this is a pivotal moment for this team. And if you haven't already, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. We're cranking out content every single day covering the Phillies, covering the National League, covering the entire baseball world. Drop a like on this video, it really helps us out. And make sure you're turning on those notifications so you don't miss anything. We'll be back talking to you next time right here on Phillies Focus. Thanks for rocking with us, Philly Focus. We'll get through this together.